find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
Hello, and welcome to Ready for Love Radio. This is your host and love coach, Nikki Lee. Today, we are going to talk to the author of, you're going to love this. This is such a unique title for a book. Divine, Messy, Human. You know, I looked at that and I thought, you know, that's a very unusual title, but how many days do I feel like that just fits? Especially messy human, you know, but divine, messy human. I like that. I'm really curious why she picked that title and what the heck it means, but I like it. I like it a lot. And she's all the way from Australia, and it's a normal time of day where I am, but it's like 5:30 in the morning where she is right now. So we're going to find out all kinds of things, and we're going to meet Amanda Kate. Amanda, it's awesome to have you with me today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you, Nikki.
You know, I feel so bad for you that it's so early, but you tell me you're a morning person, so yeah. You're telling me that you're okay with it being 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
and that your dog Zeus is sleeping behind you. He's
yes.
good to go. So
he is.
We're all good. We're all good. Yeah. All right. Well, if he wakes up and says hi, we're good with that too. So we're okay with animals in the background. So you know, I've been looking forward to this and I've started reading your book. I've only read parts, but there's all kinds of neat lines that I like, and I can't wait to tell people about holding, and you do tell us more about it once we get there.
Yeah.
But let me tell the listeners a little bit more about you. She is a transformational kinesiology coach. This is interesting. I'm fascinated with kinesiology too. She is the author of Divine, Messy, Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. That is quite a title. She's a kinesiologist, a mentor, an archetypal life coach, a mother, and more. A recovering people pleaser. See, been there. Whew, recovering. That's the place to be with that. And a self-flagellator, she walks the path straddling the divine and messy daily, always growing, developing, and learning new ways of being to hopefully one day leave the earth better than she found it. She lives in Melbourne, Australia, with her twin flame. I'm guessing your husband, correct? Her
yes.
children, his children, and a dog named Zeus. You know, it sounds like it should be the end of the song. For some reason, I should have said that with my music in the background.
Yeah. It's the dog named Zeus part that gets people.
Yeah. Like I said, I forget the name of the song, but that sounds like a song.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, and like I said, I started reading the book. The other night I wasn't quite tired enough when I got ready to go to sleep, and I picked up my Kindle and I started reading. And I like I said, there's just sections that were jumping out at me as I was reading it. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm enjoying it so far. So this is good.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
First question: divine, messy, human. Why? Why did you call it that?
I think because for so long I denied my divinity. As a child, I loved, going to church and being in that sacred space, and I guess it got less cool as I got older, and I started to also notice, I guess, that being the same, person before they walked in, and that the disparity, I guess, between what they were preaching versus what they were living, and it kind of turned me away from it. And then, of course, I was so busy trying to hide my messiness, to paper over the cracks, to deny the fact that I did not have my shit together. I just didn't. I was struggling day to day and trying to pretend that everything was wonderful, trying to pretend my marriage was fabulous and as good as it looked from the outside. And I was trying to keep up that facade of, the perfect life, so to speak, the 2 children, the beautiful home, the husband who's rich and successful. And it made my human existence really, really challenging. Now, as I reconnected to the divine within myself and to the divine in all of us, and started to acknowledge and accept the fact that as a human being, I am going to be messy as hell. I'm not always going to have stuff together. I'm not always going to get it right. And the more I could admit that, not just to myself, but to others, the easier my human experience got. And the more I was able to tap into grace and forgiveness and to accept the shadows and the light within life. And so that's really where the title came from. Originally, it was just going to be called Messily Human, but I realized that the divine is such an important part of our existence that it just needed to go first.
Okay. 2 questions. Do you think that social media makes us feel that we have to seem more perfect in our lives?
Oh, look, to be honest, I'm in my mid-40s, so I was doing it well before social media.
Okay. Well, I had a feeling about that. But so many people are now on social media pretending to be.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's be serious. People put the perfect they either whine on social media or they put the perfect moments on social media. You know?
Absolutely. And I think that definitely adds to it, over the last, 10, 15 years especially. I think in the beginning we were just, it was a great way to check in with people from, especially for me living in the UK and having my family and some friends in Australia, which is where I was originally from, that it narrowed that distance. And then when we moved from the UK back to Australia again, it narrowed the distance. But I do believe it has evolved into this competition and comparative. It's so much easier to put yourself into comparative suffering. Oh, they've got it better than me. My life's not that great. Or they're doing this and I'm failing. And I think it does make it so much easier because it's in our face all the time. Right.
Well, and especially like people posting selfies to get self-validation, or, anytime they get a new something, they have to post it and show it off, or you'll know somebody and they'll post something, you'll be like, hold on, and I'm not saying everybody does that, but there's a lot of people that, there's a good number of people that it does seem like a competition. They have to post everything in such a way that it's only the good stuff they post, and it's a very filtered view of their life. I post me, the good, the bad, the whatever, and then there's other people that seems to be their place to vent and complain about whatever.
Yes.
So it's interesting how people choose to use social media.
Oh, it definitely is, and I think it adds to, as I say, that comparative suffering and that that patriarchal ideal that part of the way that we stay, I guess, controllable as a society is by keeping us in want and in lack and in competition, rather than that whole idea of the rising tide raises all the boats. And the more that we can lift ourselves up, the more we can naturally lift other people up, and the more we can be a guiding light to show people how to lift themselves up. And I think that's, I guess, the ideal place to go.
Right. So do we do things in such a way to help build people up, or do we do things in such a way to spread the victim mentality? Sadly, that's what seems to be sometimes.
Yes.
Okay, see, they're beautiful. Okay, I like it. Not the victim mentality. I hate that. But anyway, okay. And other question. It seems like you were noticing the hypocrisy with certain people. This is what
all too often.
Oh yeah, it drove me crazy as a kid and into my teens, and still does. So that didn't. What kind of an impact did that have on you? It didn't make it easier for you. It seems like it made it. It didn't make it easier for you to be less judgmental on yourself.
Oh, definitely not. Because I think there was always such a pressure on what will the neighbours think, or what will they think, or there was this pressure from very young to make sure that, we were doing the right thing. And that right thing changes depending on which group of people you're with, of course, whether it be with family, whether it be with church friends, whether it be with... And so it was very much almost about being the chameleon and making sure that everybody else thinks your life is okay, not just that you think your life is okay. That was certainly not the narrative I lived to. And I think when I then met my ex-husband, he was very much the same. It was all about what will people think, and what would people think of you when. And then there was a whole heap of, I guess, the projection and perception aspect that comes into that, because nobody asked. Nobody said, how would you prefer me to behave right now? We just looked at, what we thought was expected. And what I really did notice was that, especially as I got older, I think as a child you just accept it and you go, oh, well, that's just the way things are. But as I got older and started questioning things, it's like, hang on, you're saying this and you're doing that. And I was noticing more and more the words and actions not lining up. And being somebody who is empathic, and this was part of what created my people-pleasing and my self-flagellation, the beating myself up in my head over and over constantly, a lot of that was based in this feeling, that energetic disconnection between the actions and the deeds, the words and what was actually playing out. There was the, I love you, but nothing you ever do is good enough. And I'd be going, but hang on, that doesn't add up. I really, really love that you do this, but then I hate that you do this. And they'd be two sides of the same coin. And this is my favorite thing about you, and this is my least favorite thing about you. And again, they'd be the same thing. And so there was this real tearing apart, or what felt like a tearing apart of my personality, because there was these constantly changing goalposts of how we were, or how I was expected to behave, both inside the house and then outside the house. And outside the house was different, whether it be with, say, his family or our friends, or friends that came through me or friends that came through him. And so I just became more and more and more aware of it. And then the tearing apart as we would leave those social interactions of everything that I'd done wrong, everything that wasn't quite good enough, everything that I'd said that I should not have said. Now I understand this is what is referred to as emotional abuse. But at the time, it was just my normal. It was just the way that I lived. And but the more that I noticed it, and the more that it became this disparate chasm between, I guess, truth and perception, it just became harder and harder to live with.
Right. You know what's funny is, as you were telling that initial part of the story, the fact that seeing other people's hypocrisy didn't pose a red flag to you that you shouldn't judge yourself made me immediately see something from myself as a kid and as a teenager and even in my 20s that I should have seen in myself, right, and didn't for years and years and years. And which actually, the fact that I saw that so quickly now is a big revelation to me of how far I've come. You know, because I didn't see that for years and decades, right? But, I mean, I instantly saw that as you were telling your story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's amazing that I lived the very same thing, never saw that.
Yes.
And should have. I should have.
Because it's our normal. And I think that's the key, is the fact that this is normal behavior when you're growing up like that, when you're in those relationships. And you go, well, this is just the way life is. This is just the way I'm supposed to expect it. But then as you grow and as you get exposed to different things, you know, for me it was my turning point of finding kinesiology and starting to go into, I guess, the energetic psychology, into the body's energy system, into the mind-body-spirit connection, into the way that emotions impact our health. As I started going into that journey, it just became more and more and more clear, because I was learning all of these different things that I was going, oh my God, and this is how, you know, I guess other people interact or other people speak to each other. You know, when we did this work on aggressive versus passive versus assertive behavior, I had never really understood what passive-aggressive was before, because that was just the way people communicated in my world. But learning about it, I was like, oh, my God. And I'd heard about it. I mean, I knew what aggression was and I knew what passivity was, but I never really was clear on what passive-aggressive was until then. And I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense.
Didn't we think we knew what it was?
I didn't even think I knew what it was. People would talk about it and I'd be like, I'd almost be too ashamed to admit that I didn't get it. But even with anxiety, I didn't realize that for years I suffered with anxiety, but I didn't know what it was because it was such a normal feature in my body. Right. That was just me. And it wasn't until I started not feeling anxious that I went, oh my God, I've been anxious half my life.
Well, that's like I was telling a friend of mine, because, like, okay, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a good friend of mine whose mother has studied all these medical conditions, okay, including one that I have, okay, and so she feels that she understands what this condition is that I have. Yet she thought that I would be able to do some working for her. Well, if I was to actually do this work and I had to lift, I'm under restrictions from a doctor not to lift anything over 20 pounds, which sounds kind of crazy, but if something heavy falls against my chest, or I try to pick up something that's too heavy and there's a pull in my chest, I have all kinds of aneurysms in my chest, in my aorta, And if one of those is to tear, I could die within minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So she feels that she understands the condition of an aortic dissection, okay, because she studied it. Obviously, she doesn't, okay. Yes. So there's hearing something, there's studying something, then there's actually having it and studying it and understanding it because you live it every day. And you're studying it because you're studying a condition because you're a nurse. You know, that's two very different studying and understanding things, you know.
Well, I think you've summed it up beautifully, the difference between having information versus knowledge versus wisdom. You know, I had the information about what anxiety was. Then as I deepened my knowledge, you know, or anxiety, emotional abuse, you know, I could probably list a whole heap of different things there, passive aggressiveness, communication styles. I had information about them, but as I deepened that into knowledge and starting to understand the information, and then was able to translate it into my own lived experience, my own cellular wisdom at a deeper level, and actually embody that knowledge into myself and understand all of the behaviors that then created, all of the paths I'd taken, it went from the information to the knowledge to the wisdom. And I think that's what you're explaining there. You've got the wisdom of the disease because you're living with it. You understand the pros, the cons. You've got all the information. You've got the knowledge, but you've also got the wisdom of living with it, of needing to, I guess, alter your life to some extent to be able to live with it and to keep yourself safe. So, I think that's a beautiful description of it.
Yeah. It's two very different things.
Yeah.
But interesting. I didn't intend to go quite that far with that question, but when those two questions popped into my head after you were explaining, I was like, let's go a little deeper with this.
But I think it's a beautiful example because it is one of those lived examples where you can so beautifully illustrate. I had a lot of information about my life and I had a lot of knowledge. I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I have very little wisdom about what of that knowledge and information I haven't truly embodied within my form and what I've chosen not to embody. And I think that is a really big part of our learning and development is a lot of people out there, we are not short of information. We can Google whatever we want.
Right.
You know, we can. We're not short of information. Now, how we understand and use that information all varies from person to person, but embodying it as wisdom, I think very few people do. And I think that is the beauty of life coaching, of kinesiology, of somatic therapies, of all of that stuff is actually understanding our own innate bodily wisdom to get back in touch with who and what we are as a body, mind, spirit, as a physical form and a soul self. And as we develop that wisdom and increase that wisdom, our human experience gets easier. The way we interact with other humans gets easier. The more grace we extend to other humans gets easier.
Right. Well, I see any search engine, Google, whatever, as that's a starting point to get surface information and then dig into it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's step one. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Now, curiosity is one of my favorite things. You know what, when they were handing out curiosity, I easily got a triple dose. I really did. What do you think is the role of curiosity in healing for us? For
me, it is probably one of the biggest parts of it. you don't know what you don't know until you know different. And often, as I said, we're swimming in that water. It is normal. We don't know that we're wet because we're in it. And it's not until we start, I guess, lifting parts of ourselves out of the water, or until people start telling us that we're swimming in water, that we start to understand it, because it's so normal. We're used to being wet, so how do we know what dry is until we've, taken a towel and dried ourselves off, so to speak? And the cultural water we swim in, the societal water we swim in, the family that we swim with, the friends, everybody has an effect on us. And it is fascinating when you start to unpack it. Even when you start looking at some of the stuff that's coming out, whether it be, woke culture, or more about the systemic racism, or we don't know what we don't know until we know differently, and until we can find out from, say, other people's perspectives. But even within ourselves, my upbringing was normal. My marriage was my normal. And it wasn't until I started getting very physically sick because of the emotional and psychological abuse, and my parents weren't abusive, by the way. I'm talking about the husband there, just in case people link them together and get the wrong idea. My parents are very loving. They still are. They're, beautiful humans. And also, knowing what we now know through Gabor Mate's work on trauma, as well as, some other top researchers, our family of origin do create trauma within our system. Anything that our body stores as less than nourishing and nurturing is traumatic, if we store it as such. And there was a lot of things that I stored as trauma in my body. And I think what I needed to do was really get curious about why I was so unwell. Why my physical body. Normal doctors, Western doctors, allopathic doctors could not find anything wrong with me. They said I was fine, and the only answer they had was antidepressants, which I knew was not the answer to my physical problems. Not one of them asked me about my relationships. Not one of them asked me about my support structures. And it wasn't until I got curious about it. I got curious about what other people were telling me. I got curious about, well, what else could it be? What else could cause it? And started asking more and more questions. That's when I started finding not even answers necessarily, but new questions to ask, which gave me a deeper understanding of then why I was asking that question. And yes, some of them obviously come up with answers, because I know it sounds crazy to ask questions to get more questions. But I think especially when we start getting into the body wisdom, the soul, it does feel like there's only more questions to ask, and the questions get better.
Right. Well, the thing is, sometimes you have to keep asking questions, but there are questions that you ask that prompt other questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you have to dig for the answers sometimes.
Yes.
That's the nature of finding, because, well, no matter what question you start with, it's not a one-size-fits-all. One question isn't going to get the answer for everybody.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just not.
Yeah. And that's why I say let our inner toddlers run free, that why is that? Why is that? How does that happen? How does that work? I love thinking about it being my inner toddler, just being able to ask all of those whys and whats and hows.
Well, and the thing is, too, not everybody, I learned this as a kid because my dad can't ask a comprehensive question to save himself. He never has been able to. When I was a kid, and he was the one that conducted the Bible studies that I was always stuck in, and he just, whenever we had a review, the man could not come up with questions. He could not do it. Mm-hmm. And finally we got to the point, because whenever we had a meeting of any kind in the study, we always had to do it as a family ahead of time. So I had to sit through his questions twice Okay, nobody should have to sit through his questions twice. It's inhumane.
Yeah.
So he finally got to the point where he says, "How about you come up with questions for us?" Okay, well, at least I know they're going to be good questions, So,
yeah.
So I was just kind of destined to have my own radio show, so I got to ask questions. Ooh, But, so I have to have my own radio show, so I get to ask questions. Woo! Otherwise I'm sitting at home listening to somebody else's show going, why aren't you asking me those questions?
Yes,
but,
absolutely.
But yeah, well, and I'll sit home watching like the news or whatever, and they're interviewing somebody. I'm like, why don't you ask blah 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 blah? So they never ask my questions. They ask dumb questions, but that's a oh well, such is how it works sometimes.
It is.
So
absolutely.
That's just how it is, right?
It is.
Now, there's a quote I have to read from your book because I want to ask you another question. You talk about something called holing. There's healing, and then there's holing. And for the audience, since they're not looking at my notes, that's spelled WHOLING, that's interesting. I kind of had to stop and I went, hold on. What is this? And she's got a whole chapter in here about that. And it's a term that she came across in the book, Potentiate Your DNA. I had to go over all these words because I'm like I gotta pronounce this stuff right. Okay, and so it was in Saul Luckman's book, and he explains, and I'm going to have her really explain this to you, but I have to, since I get to host the show, I want to read this to you. It says healing. And then in parentheses, holing, must not be confused with simple curing. Curing is designed to make the problem go away, no questions asked and no insights gained. Healing is a very different activity. My ears really perked up when I saw this. I love this. True healing embraces the problem, which is actually a teaching tool employed by our higher self as a way of integrating and being transformed by it. Curing focuses on symptoms without realizing their spiritual messages. Healing is a body, mind, spirit phenomenon involving an increase in awareness that takes the form of transformational step on our evolutionary journey of conscious personal mastery. And then she literally, I'm not just saying this, but in the book she says, boom, like that. So it's funny because I would have said that, but she put you up.
Yeah. I write the way I speak.
She does. I like that. So I like this, okay? So she says the healing journey is about going back and picking up all the pieces of self that we have suppressed, repressed, oppressed, hidden away, and cut off ourselves due to shame, embarrassment, trauma, or other life events. Subconsciously, we hid parts of ourselves to ensure that we fit in and can be embraced by our tribe, but often do ourselves a disservice by not showing others or acknowledging to ourselves the true light of our being. I love this part. I had to share that verbatim out of the book. And that's only, what, chapter 2?
I think so. I think it's early on.
But it's very near the front. It's only like page 10 or something. That's why I could find it at the last second to show you. So, okay, tell us why you shared that all the way up front. Because like I said, I absolutely love that. So tell us why that was so important that you wanted to share it all the way up at the front, and tell us more about that.
I think it's the fact that it is so integral to our journey if we truly want to get well. If we want to live our truest, most beautiful, most abundant, most vital life, we can't just look for cures. And that's what doctors do. They want us to be not sick. If you look at their parameters that they do their blood tests based on, they are not looking at healthy and vital. They are looking at markers of illness. So if you are on the lower end, you're not quite sick enough for us to care yet. So, go away until you're in the negatives or whatever it is. And I've been taking my results to naturopaths, and the doctors are going, you're fine. And the naturopaths are going, well, hang on, no, you're not. You need help with this, this, and this. These are the ranges we look at as being health, not sick. Whereas doctors are looking for not sick. They are looking to get rid of your symptoms. So, let's use an example of you, bash your knee and all of a sudden it swells up. Well, there's a reason your body has inflamed that area. It's like wrapping it in bubble wrap to protect it while it heals. Now, if you think about inflammation through the body, which we often get because we've been eating foods that are not whole foods, they're processed and they're effectively dead energy because they've had the life taken out of them. We're surrounded by chemicals. We walk down the road and we're breathing in exhaust fumes and plastics and all sorts of, stuff that should not be in our body. Our body will have inflammatory markers because it is processing stuff that should not be there. Now, it's the same with our emotional state. It's the same with our psychological state. It is the same with our mental state, our spiritual state, our sexual, financial, relational states. Everything that we go through affects us within our physical body. And when we are just looking for a cure, i.e. to get rid of symptoms that you're having, we're not looking at what's causing those symptoms. So you can get rid of the inflammation. I can give you an anti-inflammatory, no problem, but why is that inflammation there? What is the stress in your body that is causing that inflammation? Almost all of my stress was caused by emotional and psychological distress and abuse.
Well, it's like, do you have an obvious symptom or are you well?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and we're not asking those questions.
After I had my dissection, which I literally almost died, and I had to be taken in for emergency surgery, and I was in a coma and in the hospital for a month, and I've had 2 major open heart surgeries as follow-up, and so I now have 4 doctors that manage all this for me, right? So I have my vascular surgeon, my thoracic surgeon, my vascular doctor, and my cardiologist, and of course my general practitioner. And I told him, I said, okay, now hold on. Could you tell me what is the function of each of these people? If I have a problem, which one of them do I go to? Because with all of these people, I don't know who addresses what. I know I have appointments with all of these people throughout the year, some more than once. Now, thank goodness we have everybody down to pretty much once a year now. I said, but tell me what each of these people does so I know who to call when I have problems. Because it's hard when 4 people are dealing with one thing, to know who to call. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, wow, that's insane. But it's do you have a specific symptom that's a problem that we need to deal with immediately, or is the body actually well? And very few doctors deal with, are you actually a well person? So.
And they're not looking to get you to health.
No.
And without getting too controversial, it's probably a whole other thing. The pharmaceutical companies have said that their mission statement is to have every person on at least one medication.
Yeah.
They're a profit-making company. And so you look at that, and that's not a system of wellness. That is a system of illness and sickness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what we're talking about in terms of this holing aspect is getting the mind, body, and spirit in alignment, allowing your innate bodily wisdom to help you heal where possible. And I'm not saying modern medicine is not needed. It is absolutely. You're a testament to that. One of my girlfriends is testament to that. If she didn't have the intervention from doctors this year, she would not be with us now. It is necessary, and I'm not dismissing that. What I am saying is, as well as being not sick, you can also aim for health and vitality and abundance and wellness.
Right. Well, both need to be there, and we need both of them.
Absolutely.
Well, that's when I used to work for a chiropractor, and it's like, if you have, because I used to have horrible migraines, and I used to have them about 5 times a week, so do you just take a pill for the migraines, or do you try to find the root cause of them and go and take care of that? So basically, are you putting a Band-Aid on the problem, or are you trying to find the root cause of the problem and go there?
Yeah. And what doctors were trying to do for me was they were looking to use antidepressants as a Band-Aid. Right.
Well, and that's
because they didn't know what it was caused by.
That seems to be the go-to. If they can't find anything else, you need an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Oh, good heavens. That's not the way to go. No. But, wow. All right. You've got, there's like 80 different things I want to talk to you about. And sadly, we don't have 10 hours.
I'm always happy to come back again and have another chat. So
I think I want to have an entire show and just talk about intuition with you. I really do.
Yes.
That is by far one of my favorite topics. I love talking about intuition and encouraging people to develop their intuition. Yes. So I think I'm going to save all of that for another show.
Yeah.
How about defining? We've only got about 15 minutes. How about defining trauma? Because you've already talked about that a little bit. What about defining trauma and how it impacts our body?
So trauma, as I mentioned before, is anything that we store in our body, whether it be as actions, behaviors, memories, that is less than nourishing and nurturing to ourselves. So what I find traumatic, you may not find as traumatic. You might be like, oh, that's absolutely fine. For me, it will be dependent on what I store as traumatic. And there's some amazing research out that's done by that at the moment. But what it means is that we will often create behaviors based around those trauma patterns. And the trauma often is feeling unsafe, feeling unlovable, feeling unworthy. They tend to be the really, really big ones. Because what that does is that is not allowing us to be fully accepted by our tribe. And this isn't going to cultural appropriation tribe. This is going back to when we as humans were first on the planet. We were tribal creatures. We lived in tribes. And if we were not accepted by that tribe, we would be cast out into the wilderness and we would not have a great chance of survival because of the safety in numbers. So basically, our brain still, even though we're in the modern day and we're relatively safe, our brain still goes into this as live or die. And so we create these behaviors that allow us to live supposedly harmoniously within our tribe. But those behaviors aren't always resourceful behaviors. You know, my people-pleasing was not a resourceful behavior. And it's interesting, I talk to my children about it and I say, you know, who are your favorite teachers at school? And they go, oh, this one and this one. And okay, so why? And they'll tell me all of the reasons. You know, they just have fun with the students. They enjoy it. They're interesting. all of this kind of stuff. And I said, do you think they want to be a teacher? And they're like, yeah, you can tell when they come in the classroom. You go, okay, so who are your least favourite teachers? Oh, so-and-so, because they're grumpy and they shout at us and they're this, that and the other. And you go, do you think they want to be a teacher? Oh, probably not. It feels like they hate it when they come in. It's just a simple example because most people have been to school and understand teachers that seemingly love their job and those that don't. Now, when you go down to people-pleasing, I was doing the job that I thought other people wanted me to do. I was doing the things to try and make them happy through my perception of what I thought they wanted me to do to make them happy. But already I was so far from the truth because I was putting my idea of what I wanted to be happy into them, assuming it's what they wanted, looking back at myself going, you're not providing that for me, and going into this really poor behavior pattern. And, you know, falling on my sword and martyring myself and being a victim and all of those things, being reactive and defensive. And because I was setting myself up for failure from the very beginning because I was putting everybody else up on a pedestal, busting my ass trying to make them happy and failing because I wasn't the person who could make them happy. And so it's really interesting when you start to look at that is actually a trauma behavior. I am working within my trauma patterning and basically keeping that trauma going. Now, as I've done more and more work, I'm less of a people pleaser, but funnily enough, I probably make more people happy because I'm living my life and I'm being an example to others about what can happen when you live your life. And that is a much more positive place to sit than doing all of these things that people may not even want to try and make them happy.
Right.
And not living to my truth.
Setting a much better example for them, too.
Yeah. And, you know, I wasn't living to my truth. I wasn't living to my soul truth. I was doing what I perceived other people wanted me to do.
Right.
And so I wasn't even close to the truth, let alone my truth of it. And I look at the way, you know, my children have watched me, because I don't talk to them about all the work that I've done, but they've watched me change. They've watched me go from this angry, defensive, sad, broken, or feeling broken woman into this woman who has written a book and started a business and, you know, actually done stuff and become happier in the process.
Right.
So I don't shout nearly ever anymore because I don't need to, because I'm not angry and suppressing all of my emotions. If I've got a problem, I'll talk to you about it and then it's done.
Right.
It's resolved. There's not all of these loose ends. And often, and I said it to my partner when we first got together, funnily enough, when I used to argue with my ex-husband, he would want, well, I don't do that. Give me examples of when I've done that. So I would then need to remember all of our past arguments, all of the things he used to do to be able to give the examples. And then I would give the examples and he'd go, you're always bringing up the past. Why are you bringing up the past? But he'd be asking for examples that have made me mad and then telling me when I bring up the examples and prove to him that behavior is a repetitive behavior, then it would be, oh, but, you know, you're always bringing up the past, stop living in the past, you've got to forget all of that stuff. Well, I can't forget it because you want the examples. And I said to my partner, one of the things that I love is that I don't have to use all of that brain space remembering all of that crap because it's not important. And we don't need to keep dredging it up because I don't need examples, because what we do when we argue is we come to a resolution. We finish it. We come to a place where even if we don't agree with one another, we are coming to a place of mutual love, mutual respect, and mutual, you know, kindness. We don't need to agree. And it's such a different way of being in a relationship, because I can feel my body in much more relaxed state because I'm not keeping this tally and these examples held with me, which just kept the anger going, really. But I needed them there because I'd be asked for them to back up what was going on. And so you can see in that being able to let go of that trauma, being able to let go of all those arguments. And now in this state where and I mean, look, we argue so rarely. It's quite funny, actually, when I think it used to be a daily occurrence, multiple times a day, to going, we can go months without an argument. And when we do argue, it's more of a discussion because we've got different points of view, which we should have because we're different people. But you can see in those two examples the difference in the trauma patterning. I don't need that trauma patterning now because I feel safe, I feel worthy, I feel like I'm enough. Back in my old relationship, I didn't feel safe, I didn't feel worthy, and I certainly didn't feel enough. And I needed to hold all of that stuff in, which takes effort and energy and pressure and stress. It's no wonder I had chronic fatigue trying to hold all of that emotional baggage within my human form.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you kind of hit on these things, but how has your idea of love and relationships changed as you've learned more about yourself?
I know that I can definitely love deeper because I love myself deeper. And look, I hate the languaging, by the way. I'm just going to put it out there about that. It feels very shaming often the way that people do it on social media, in the way that they're saying, you can only love yourself, or you can only love others as much as you love yourself, and you can only allow yourself to be loved as much as you love yourself. Now, I understand that it's true, and also, as we are learning to love ourselves, it is a process. It is not this shame, well, because you don't love yourself, you're not going to be able to receive love, so tough luck, princess, get on with it. It feels very shaming the way that it's often stated, and I get that a lot of this is spiritual paradox, and we've got to go into a nuanced discussion about it, and people are wanting a screen grab. But I guess this is why I wanted to start the conversation in that way, in saying that as we develop our love for self, as we start to understand our unresourceful behaviors and why they are there, and we are able to give ourselves more compassion and empathy for the good and bad within us, I think the more that does open us up in our companionship with others and in our communion with them, whether it be friends, whether it be lovers, whether it be family members, I think that it opens us up to allowing more of that good stuff in. And it's a process. So in terms of my love and relationships, because I can extend myself more grace, more empathy, more compassion, I can do the same to them. And I'm able to look when they are being unresourceful and go, I wonder what's behind that. Because I know when I'm being unresourceful, it's not because I'm wanting to hurt anybody else or, yell at them or start an argument or anything. It's because there's something in me that's hurting. There's something in me that needs some love and compassion. And so now when I see other people behaving in that way, I can start, instead of going straight to they're being nasty, they're trying to hurt me, I can go to what is going on under the surface.
Very true. Very true. So how did your relationship paradigm shift?
I think it was that understanding that, when we're looking for relationships, we so often create this list of what we want in the other person. The traditional one is, what is it for women, tall, dark, and handsome, and for, men, it's what, blonde, busty, and, whatever else. They're the stereotypical, start of your list. Now, I'm not saying mine was that at all, but, we make this list of what we expect the other person to do for us, how we expect the other person to behave, the qualities we want in another person. My paradigm shift was, how do I want to be in this relationship? How do I want to show up? What is the best version of me that I can offer this person? How can I, in this relationship, when the honeymoon stage is over and, life gets real, how can I show up in a way that still shows my love and compassion and connection to this person? How can I be the best me within it? So it was switching that paradigm from looking at what somebody else could offer me, which again is that the modern day, more patriarchal thing. What can you give me? What's in it for me? The good old whiffum thing. I now look at, what can I do for you? How can I serve you to the best of my ability? Now, sometimes the best of my ability will be saying, no, I can't do that, and that's not okay. And still, I look at, how can I be of service here?
Awesome. One of the things that I've long said on the show is, when you're making your list, make it 2 columns and list what you bring to the relationship. Don't forget your value when you're figuring out what you want in a mate. Because how many people do that? They list what they want, but they don't list what they bring and what they offer in the relationship. So I like that.
Yeah.
And you're the first person that's ever said that. I like that. See? There we go.
Yeah.
I like it.
Awesome. I'm pleased it resonates, because for me, that was what allowed me to find the loving relationship that I've got now. It was life-changing.
Right. Awesome. I like that. Like I said, I've never had somebody else say that. That is so cool.
Kindred spirits, Nikki.
Yes, exactly. See? I'm a night person, you're a morning person. Other than that, we're good. And different sides of the world.
Yes.
So, how can listeners find out more about you?
The easiest place is at amandakate.com.au. So again, for especially those in the States, remember the .au on the end for Australia. So amandakate.com.au, and all my social links are there. It's just the easiest place really to go find me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I will have all your information on the show page and a replay of today's show. The replay will post right after the show finishes up tonight. And I will definitely have you back. We've got to talk about intuition next. Intuition.
Definitely.
We got a little talking about intuition.
Yes, we can get juicy with that one, definitely. I'd love to. I'd be honored.
Like I said, I love talking about intuition and helping other people that haven't developed it yet to develop. I don't know what I'd do without intuition. I'd be in deep trouble.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely would be definitely be in trouble. I'm gonna call the show page today lovecoachjourney.com/holing. That's what I want it to be. WHOLING. So the replay will be there, along with all of her links. I will have those for you. So thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed it. And we will definitely talk about intuition next time. So we'll work that out.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
And listeners, I'll see you next time on Ready for Love Radio.